Hi everyone, I very quickly just wanted to talk a little bit about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, as I have been playing it, and it does have some interesting things we can talk about, such as the PC port and the current state of it, and of course the fact that it is a Star Wars game. And when it comes to any sort of big name title, Star Wars, Harry Potter and whatnot, I find it necessary to just say that when I'm judging this, I'm judging it from the perspective of a person who doesn't interact a lot with Star Wars. I have played the Lego games, I have watched the old movies, and that's that. I dropped off when Disney took over. I like the Clone Wars and Cartoon Network, and again, that's about my exposure to Star Wars. I haven't, become this huge fan of it that some people are, and as such, I will be covering this more or less for the game more so than the overarching Star Wars part of it. I enjoyed Fallen Order a lot, like the other prequel to this. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and this one I did also enjoy, despite its issues, because it does have issues, and while I don't think they necessarily make the game worth playing, it does definitely impact you as you're playing. I think in terms of, everything else, this is sort of just gotta be a talk about the game like we usually would. It's the first AAA game we cover, so we'll see how that goes. And it's definitely, a little bit different. So yeah, let's talk about it. So, to start off with, I wanted to just talk about the technical performance that are facing the PC port of this game. Jedi Survivor is probably the worst PC port I have ever played. And that's saying something. The amount of technical issues on day one Jedi Survivors had, or has depending on when you're watching it, for me it is definitely still a has, is incredible. When I was reading the reviews while installing the game, I saw people calling it Jedi CPU Survivors, for one, that I found really funny, and then I booted the game up and I understood it almost immediately. This game runs like ass. That is both with or without my recording software. The only difference is that I have to run it on the lowest graphical settings possible if I am using Streamlabs to record with. If I am not, I can run it on medium. Now, to give you some perspective, because at that point it is sort of important to also just mention, I have a pretty high-end PC. I have an RTX 3080 Ti, I have 64 gigs of RAM. I should be able to run this easily with Streamlabs open, and it is taxing on my PC. I am hitting maybe 30 frames, usually 20, and then I'm also experiencing a lot of pop-ins, meaning that when I'm exploring the world, there will all of a sudden be a tree in my face. It is that bad. I cannot recommend, if you're planning on buying it for PC, I cannot recommend that right now if that's something that will face you. For me personally, and this is sort of also an interesting thing to talk about, I don't think it faces me a whole lot. I used to own a really bad PC, and when I was younger I used to play Minecraft in like 15 frames. So I'm used to sort of a bad performance in games. It's not new to me, and I don't face it as much, so I could enjoy the game even with some slightly lacking performance in comparison to what I'm used to. And it is what it is, right? So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, let that be known. If you're planning to buy it on PC, I wouldn't recommend it, just wait a little bit. So now let's get into actually talking about the game. In terms of gameplay, Star Wars Jedi Survivors is a fantastic game. It does everything from lightsaber combat to the direct feel of the game really, really well. I, as I've said, am not the biggest Star Wars fan on Earth, but I have friends that are, and they are all in agreement that this feels good. However, I have watched the prequels, and the idea of being a Jedi Knight that I used to, fantasize about when I was a kid is a feeling that I've never found a game that really let me explore until now. Never has it felt this good to go into a group of enemies pull out your akimbo dual-wielding lightsabers and just start stabbing and slapping. Because that's what this game is gonna teach you. There are some lower tier enemies that die in a couple of hits. I played on normal difficulty, or I think it's called Jedi Knight. It's like the one that the game recommends you, as I think that gives you me the most objective sort of look at it that most people experience. And it felt good, mainly because it balances the feeling of power with the feeling of danger really well. Whereas in some games you can feel powerful because you're running around one-tapping everything, here you're feeling powerful because some enemies are one-tappable. You just go in and you just slice them up, but there are also enemies that aren't. And the ones that aren't are punishing, really punishing. And that makes for a really good balance, because you see, when you have to also focus, not just slash, it makes it sort of more fun. Because even in the smaller battles, even against normal enemies, you have to stay focused, because they can do damage. However, you can also do it to them. Jedi Survivors is not like particularly hard. I don't want to make this sound like Dark Souls, even though it does have the tag as a Souls-like. It really is, but not in the difficulty terms. It's a hard game for sure in comparison to some. Like, if you come from a background of exclusively playing Uncharted or normal, then yeah, this might be a little bit difficult, but it's nothing excruciating. However, when it comes to difficulty, we have to talk about boss fights, because they are a major part of the game. And all of them are really good, with the exception of one. I'm not gonna name him, but I am gonna say it's a side boss in the first big area you find. He is a pain in the ass, and apparently it's because he has some bugged attacks, so he can chain them back to back. And that makes for a really irritating time, because he is a very slow boss, so you'll end up getting one hit in, and then you'll dodge away, and then he'll chain his one-shot attacks again, and then you'll have to dodge away again after getting a single hit in, and so on and so forth. However, he is optional, and they're likely gonna patch that soon. And, well, when it comes to combat, it also sort of depends on your stance, because in this game they've given you multiple new ways of playing with a lightsaber. For me, my favorite new addition that I'm gonna really talk a lot about is the crossguard stand. The crossguard stand is a giant claymore-esque lightsaber. It is slow and heavy, but it hits like a truck. And it's not the most useful in normally, but you see, just like in Jedi Fallen Order, in Jedi Survivor you also have an ult. When you pop it, time slow, so you get a chance to get a couple of hits in. And one of the best ways to do that is pulling out your crossguard saber, slapping the shit out of your enemies, doing max damage, and then going away and pulling out your normal lightsaber, or in my case I like the dual wield a lot. So I just pull out my dual lightsabers, and then I just started smacking them until they either died or killed me. And obviously there are some steps in between that, but we don't talk about that here. When it comes to sort of, you know, the gameplay, that is the majority of the things. There are other stands. You have the normal, just a completely normal lightsaber stance. You also have one where you have a blaster, the Star Wars pistol. So you have options of how you want to play. Each of them can be spec'd into in the skill tree, so you like do more with them. You do the same with the ult and the force, and it all comes together for this really nice experience of a game where it feels like you are a Jedi Knight, more so than almost any other game. It has the speed and somehow manages to feel like a Star Wars movie in terms of the combat scenes. When you're playing, you really feel like you are in the Star Wars movies, right? You see the lightsabers going from side to side, and you hear all the sound effects, and it's all coming together. It's such a beautiful sight when it works, and goddamn is it good. Because despite all the technical issues on PC, if you can get this to run at, I'll say, at 20 frames, you, in my opinion, you'll be fine. That's what I played most of my time on. I've enhanced the footage a little bit, so it should look slightly better. And I could get through it while still enjoying the shit out of my time, which is really a testament to how well this game does almost everything. Now I want to talk about the music for a sec, But first I'll let you just listen to, you know, just a 30 seconds, 10 seconds-ish clip of the theme music from the intro to this game. So, what did you think of the music? I personally like it. I think it elevates the game while still keeping that Star Warsy theme of music both in the combat and it also does it in boss fights and in cutscenes. Because when they really want you to feel emotional, they make you feel emotional with that music. When they like slow orchestral sounds hit, and the same thing for fighting, they can pump up some energy there. But I can also explain why they can pump out some energy here. Because you see, I'm a pretty big fan of a band called The Who. So imagine my surprise when I see The Who partaking in it. I can hear when The Who is in something in terms of their music. It's very distinct, and in Pyloon Saloon, your main hub area, you can hear songs legitimately from The Who. And it's incredible. It just goes for such a memorable score that hits completely different. Alright, so briefly talking about the story and the narrative. The plot is set a couple of years after the events of Jedi Fallen Order, and it's mostly good. I really enjoyed the narrative. It kept me engaged throughout the entirety of the game in a way that rarely happens. I really cared about the characters and what would happen next. Some people have criticized the last about 10-ish% of the game, and while I agree to some point, I also don't see how it could have ended any differently than what it did. I think it's a pretty fucking good ending, honestly, all in all. And I think the game honestly managed to end on a high note. I don't necessarily agree that I think every character is written very well. I think there are some that are somewhat predictable. And again, in my attempt to keep it as vague as possible, because I don't want to spoil it, I'm gonna leave it at that. But in my opinion, it's a really good story that does the, you know, first game justice. It's really good. And if you enjoyed the first one, you are gonna enjoy that. Or this one. Like the main characters throughout the story, Grease and whatnot, they keep their humor and all of that. Don't worry about it, it's great. Grease actually made me laugh outright a couple of times. It's pretty incredible to see a game do that. And well, that's about it. If you wanna leave a like and comment or whatnot if you like the video, then you can do that. Otherwise, I'm gonna ramble a little bit about what I'm gonna do after this video is out, just to give everybody an idea. So, you made it to the end of another video. Thank you so much for watching, man. It means a lot. From here on out, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the channel before going to bed. So, to begin with, I do have a list of games that I wanna talk about. And if you have any suggestions to it, feel free to leave them. I will always try to check all the comments out I get, but at the moment the list looks as such. We have the Jedi Survivor video that I'm working on now. Then we have a video on the game franchise now called Coffee Talks, which is a game where you run a coffee shop in an alternative universe, and it's pretty cool. And then I have the big choice for me that I'm sort of debating with myself on right now. We either have the Iconoclast, which was recommended by a viewer of the channel, or I have Redfall, which Redfall from the leaked reviews doesn't look good. And if it's not that good, I don't see a point in covering it. Other than that, in a couple of months' time, I do want to expand the channel's scope a slight bit from just doing game reviews to also maybe talking about some of internet stuff or just anything else that interests me, sort of Moist Critical style or Motorhole style. But at that point I could also hopefully record during the day, because as an example, at the moment, it is 2 a.m. And that's simply because I don't have the option to record earlier in the day. So yeah, I'm gonna head off and get some sleep. Thank you so much for sticking this out as well. Have a wonderful night. You deserve it, buddy, and good night.